Almost 3,000 years ago, the ancient Greeks established what was a unique method of honoring their gods: an athletic competition. Men from city-states all over the Greek world would come to Mount Olympus to compete. For those crowned champion, there were few honors that were greater. Over the centuries, more and more competitions were added until one day an emperor put an end to everything until its modern revival. Learn more about the ancient Olympics, what they were, and how they were contested on this episode of Everything Everywhere Daily. This episode is sponsored by Quince. If you've been listening to the show for even a little while, you've heard me talk about Quince. The reason why I have such good things to say about them is because Quince has hit the trifecta by offering products that are low cost, high quality, and easy to purchase and return online. They can do this because they work directly with top artisans and cut out the middleman. This is how Quince gives you luxury pieces without the crazy markups. I had someone over at my place the other day and they asked me, "Where's that Quince blanket you talk about?" And I said, "It's right there." And they checked it out and said, "Wow, that's really a nice blanket." And I was like, "Yeah, it is." If you're looking for men's or women's clothing, home goods, or travel accessories, you owe it to yourself to check out Quince. Go to quince.com/daily for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/daily to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/daily. This episode is sponsored by Mint Mobile. Summer is just around the corner, and the folks at Mint Mobile have a hot take. Getting a summer bod is out, and getting your savings bod is in. This spring and summer, we want skimpy wireless bills and fat wallets. And with premium wireless plans for just $15 a month, you can have both without breaking a sweat or the bank. With Mint Mobile, I am able to use the exact same network on the exact same cell towers as I used before with my exact same phone and exact same phone number. What is different are the monthly bills, which are a lot less. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/EED. That's mintmobile.com/EED. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. I've done several episodes on the modern Olympics, including their founding. The birth of the modern Olympics was directly inspired by the ancient Olympics, which were established by the Greeks almost 3,000 years ago. In this episode, I want to focus on those ancient games. The ancient Olympics were very different from the modern games in many respects. First and foremost, they were a religious festival. The athletic competitions were held in honor of Zeus, the chief deity of the Greek pantheon. Athletes competed not just for personal glory, but as an offering to Zeus. Before the competitions began, athletes, trainers, and judges swore an oath to Zeus that they would compete honorably. Sacrifices were made throughout the festival, with the most important being the sacrifice of 100 oxen to Zeus at the end of the games. The Olympics got their name from Mount Olympus, where they were held. Olympus was the location of the Temple of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Olympics were a pan-Hellenic event that unified all the Greek city-states that followed the Greek religion. Each city-state was an independent entity, and it was, at least to the Greeks, therefore an international event. The first Olympic Games are said to have taken place in the year 776 BC. Like the modern games, they took place every 4 years. One of the traditions that was created during these first games was the Olympic truce, or Esicharia. The legend credits 3 kings, Iphitos of Elis, Cleisthenes of Pisa, and Lycurgus of Sparta, with founding the truce, supposedly under the guidance of the Oracle of Delphi. They agreed to halt warfare so that religious festivals and athletic competitions could proceed in peace. The truce was proclaimed before each Olympic Games by heralds called spondiphorii, who traveled throughout the Greek world announcing the start of the cessation of combat. All city-states that accepted the truce were expected to suspend military actions, refraining from invading Olympia and guaranteeing the safety of travelers. The truce was enforced by Elis, the city-state that controlled Olympia. While the majority of the Greek world respected it, violations did occur, especially during times of intense rivalry or instability. In such cases, offenders could be fined, barred from participation, or condemned in public proclamations. One famous violation occurred in 364 BC, when the Arcadians seized control of Olympia and attempted to hold the games themselves. Another came in 420 BC, when the Spartans invaded Elis during the truce and were fined and excluded from the games. Only freeborn Greek men were permitted to compete in the ancient Olympics. Women were forbidden from participating or even attending the games, with one exception: the priestess of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, harvest, and fertility, who sat in a place of honor. Later on, married women were banned from watching the games, though unmarried women were sometimes allowed to attend. Initially, the Olympics lasted just one day and featured only one event: the Stadion race. The Stadion race was the original and most prestigious event of the ancient Olympic Games, consisting of a short sprint of roughly 600 ancient feet in length. It took place on a straight track within the stadium at Olympia, and the distance of the race, approximately 192 meters or 210 yards, became a standardized unit of measurement in the Greek world. The closest modern equivalent to the stadium would be the 200-meter dash. The word stadium referred both to the length of the track and to the race itself. Greek geographers like Eratosthenes and Strabo widely used it to measure the distances between cities and regions, much like how we use miles or kilometers today. The first Olympic champion in history was Coroebus of Elis. His win was important enough that the Greek traveler and geographer Pausanias mentioned his grave in the 2nd century, almost 900 years later. Here I should note that historians such as Eusebius, about 1,000 years later, believe that he was just the first recorded champion, and that there may have been several Olympics before 776 BC. However, by tradition, the 776 BC Games are considered to be the first. Over the decades and centuries that followed, more events were added. The second event that was added was the Dialos in 724 BC at the 14th Olympiad. It was essentially a double stadion race, meaning athletes sprinted 2 lengths of the stadium track, covering approximately 384 meters. Runners began at the starting line, sprinted to the far end of the stadium, rounded a turning post, and then returned to the starting point. At the 15th Olympiad in 720 BC, the winner of the stadion was noteworthy because of how he won. His name was Orsipius. During the race, his clothing supposedly came off, which allowed him to run faster and win. He is believed to be the person that introduced nudity to the games, and after that, almost all competitors competed naked. Those same Olympics in 720 BC saw the introduction of the third event, the Dolichos. Unlike the short sprints, the Dolichos required both endurance and strategy. Its length varied but typically ranged from 7 to 24 laps of the stadion, equating to approximately 1,400 to 4,800 meters, or roughly 0.9 to 3 miles, depending on the location and the era. Athletes ran back and forth along the stadium track, turning around posts at each end. The race was likely inspired by the needs of military training and messenger duties, emphasizing stamina and pacing over explosive speed. The Games of 708 BC saw 2 major events added, which became staples of the Olympics: wrestling and the pentathlon. Pale was the ancient Greek event of wrestling, one of the oldest and most respected Olympic sports. It emphasized technique and strength with the goal of throwing one's opponent to the ground. A match was won when a wrestler scored 3 falls, each achieved by forcing any part of the opponent's back, shoulders, or hips to touch the ground. Striking was not allowed, and various holds, locks, and trips were used. Unlike modern wrestling, the match took place on sand, and there were no weight classes, so size and strength could be a major advantage. The pentathlon was 5 events: the stadion race, the long jump, the discus, the javelin throw, and wrestling. The discus was relatively similar to the modern event. Stone and iron discus discs have been found, but it's believed that most of them were usually made out of bronze. The long jump was believed to be a standing long jump, but the competitors would hold stone weights in their hands, which would be similar to modern kettlebells. They would swing these weights to get more momentum and distance in their jump. Likewise, the javelin was often thrown with a leather strap to get more distance. What we don't know is how the scoring system worked to determine the champion of the pentathlon. The games of 688 BC saw the addition of yet another combat sport event, boxing, or pygmachia. Pygmachia was not like the modern sport of boxing. Fighters wore leather straps wrapped around their hands and wrists to both protect themselves and to inflict more damage. There were no rounds, weight classes, or time limits. The fight continued until one boxer surrendered or was knocked out. Blows to the head and upper body were totally allowed, but grappling was not. Because matches could be brutal and prolonged, boxers relied on stamina, defense, and strategic targeting. The 680 BC Games saw another expansion of events with the introduction of the first equestrian event, the Tethrypon, or four-horse chariot race. Held in a hippodrome, the race involved drivers, who were often slaves or hired professionals, standing in lightweight chariots pulled by 4 horses abreast. The race typically consisted of 12 laps around the long oval track, covering about 9 kilometers or 5.6 miles, with sharp turns around posts that were dangerous and often led to dramatic crashes. Though the drivers raced, the victory was awarded to the horse owner, who was usually a wealthy aristocrat. The 648 BC Games saw the introduction of pankration. Pankration was basically mixed martial arts. It was a combination of boxing and wrestling. It allowed almost any technique, including punching, kicking, grappling, joint locks, and chokes, making it one of the most physically demanding and dangerous events. Only 2 actions were prohibited: biting and gouging of the eyes or orifices. Matches had no time limit and continued until one fighter submitted or was incapacitated. There is one final event that is worth mentioning: the Hoplitodromos, or the race in armor that was introduced in 520 BC. Participants ran wearing military gear, typically a helmet, greaves, and heavy shield. It was meant to simulate the speed and endurance needed by soldiers in battle. The race was usually 2 lengths of the stadion. While the Olympic Games got most of the attention, they weren't the only athletic games that were held in the Greek world. The Pythian Games were held in Delphi every 4 years in honor of Apollo. These games included not only athletic events, but also music, poetry, and drama competitions, reflecting Apollo's patronage of the arts. The Isthmian Games were held every 2 years near the Isthmus of Corinth in honor of Poseidon, featuring athletic contests similar to the Olympics. And the Nemean Games were biennial games held near the village of Nema in honor of Zeus. And I should also note that there were games for women. The Heraean Games were athletic competitions held in honor of the goddess Hera, primarily featuring foot races for young unmarried women. They took place at Olympia, just like the men's Olympic Games, but were held separately and at a different time. The female participants ran a shortened version of the stadion race of about 160 meters, or roughly 5/6 the length of the men's race. The competitors wore short tunics that left one shoulder bare and raced with their hair loose, which distinguished them from the male athletes. After Rome conquered Greece in the 2nd century BC, the Olympics continued to be held, but there were major changes that took place. The Romans introduced more entertainment-orientated elements and sometimes incorporated gladiatorial-style displays or exotic exhibitions, aligning the games with more Roman tastes. Roman emperors and elites began to participate as patrons and even competitors, using the games for self-promotion. The sanctity of amateur athleticism declined as professional athletes and imperial favoritism rose. The Emperor Nero famously competed in the Olympics one year and won every event. Finally, Roman citizens from across the empire could compete, which broadened the scope but diluted the original pan-Hellenistic nature of the games. As pagan rituals fell out of favor with the rise of Christianity, the religious significance of honoring Zeus faded away. By the 4th century, with increasing Christian influence, the games were seen as nothing more than pagan relics. The ancient Olympics ended in the year 393 when Emperor Theodosius I banned all pagan festivals. Earthquakes later destroyed the site at Olympia, and the games were largely forgotten for nearly 1,500 years. Interest in the ancient Olympics were rekindled during the Renaissance and later grew throughout the 19th century. This culminated in the revival of the Olympic Games at Athens in 1896 by Pierre de Coubertin. For over 1,000 years, the ancient Olympics served as a unifying force for the entire Greek and later Roman world. The modern Olympics, while quite different, serve as a link to that athletic competition created to honor Zeus almost 3,000 years ago. The executive producer of Everything Everywhere Daily is Charles Daniel. The associate producers are Austin Oakton and Cameron Kiefer. I want to thank everyone who supports the show over on Patreon. Your support helps make this podcast possible. I'd also like to thank all the members of the Everything Everywhere community who are active on the Facebook group and the Discord server. If you'd like to join in the discussion, there are links to both in the show notes. And as always, if you leave a review or send me a boostagram, you too can have it read on the show.